We'll now call to order. It is 1 minute after 6. We'll call to order our regular March 10th, 2020 Durant Council meeting. We're now in session. And would everybody please join me in standing while Chief Hauser gives the invocation, and remain standing while our city manager leads in the flag salute.
States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and liberty and justice for all.
We'd like to thank each and every one of you for being here today, and we will now ask the clerk to call the roll.
Councilmember Scherer.
Here.
Councilmember Tomlinson.
Here.
Councilmember Morris.
Here.
Vice Mayor Brittingham.
Here.
Mayor Groby.
Here, we have a quorum as all council members are present. At this time, we're going to ask all the council members to come down front. We have a special presentation to make, and James Dalton is going to make this presentation. So if you'll all follow me downstairs to the down front, we'll let James do his thing.
I'd like to thank y'all very much. You know, when you go to work somewhere, you sometimes wonder how long you're going to be there. What you might be doing 10 years, 20 years, 30 years from now. We're fortunate we've had some employees that work for us for a very long time. And I want to take a moment as a city. We want to recognize Albert Pierce Jr. Albert, would you come up? Albert has been with the city of Durant over 36 years. His last day will be Friday. So I wanted to recognize him. And I'm going to take his real key away from him here, but I'm going to give him a key to the city. There you go. You're welcome. Wow. But knowing Albert like I know Albert, he don't like the key. If you see Albert, he's usually got a cup of coffee with him. So we want to get him his very own coffee cup that you can have. And he's always bringing people donuts. Okay? If you want a donut, this has been your man. I couldn't keep donuts fresh, but I brought you the Dunkin' Donut coffee. So we want to thank Albert for 36 plus years of service to the city of Durant. And this is a Be Ready bag, and that way he can keep all of his stuff in there when his wife tells him to be ready. Okay? There you go. Thank you, Albert. Appreciate you, brother. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Albert. Congratulations.
Let's hear it. Speech. Albert, come on. You know you got a friend.
That was awesome. Ellis has left the building. Yeah, let's do it. Albert, come back, let's get, Albert. Come back and get a picture.
I won't see them cakes, buddy.
Smile like you just shot a 10.
Keep them in.
Thank you, we'll get another one with,
Good luck, Albert. He's out of here. Our next order of business is our consent items. And consent items, then I think we have A through G, and these can either be voted on as a whole, or any councilman who wishes to pull one out for discussion can do so. Any discussion, or anyone want to take anything out of the consent items? If not, do we have a motion that we accept the consent items?
Make a motion that we accept consent items A through G.
We have a motion from Councilman Brittingham. Do we have a second?
I second.
We have a motion, we have a second from Councilman Morris. Would the clerk please record the vote?
Councilmember Scherer. Councilmember Tomlinson.
Aye.
Councilmember Morris.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brittingham.
Aye.
Mayor Groby.
Aye. Consent items are all accepted. Number 4, information items. Information items A through N are items for information purposes only. If anyone wishes to pull one out and discuss it, do so at this time. If not, do we have a motion we accept the information items? I guess we don't have to have a motion. Okay, we'll move on to item 5, administration. Number A, under administration, consider approval of ordinance 1896, amending chapter 51, garbage system and facilities of the Durant Code of Ordinances. And I don't know who's going to speak on that.
The intent of this ordinance is to clarify some sections of the code. The intent of the ordinance is to clarify some sections of the code regarding solid waste. And it changes the current system of providing the extra haul on Wednesdays, and it would be moved to the first Saturday of the month. And it would have to be called to be scheduled with sanitation department for them to do pickup 3 days prior to. It also requires that trash be placed in bags, so you couldn't place your trash loosely in the container, and that the container would have to be able to, the lid would have to close. So that basically summarizes the
Is there any discussion or any questions?
Yes. So instead of the Wednesday, we're going to the first Saturday of the month for
The
curbside
entire-
pickup?
Yes, sir.
And they've got to call in at least 3 days prior?
Yes, sir. To schedule.
Do we expect a lot of calls? I
Well,
mean, we're prepared
yes, sir.
indeed if we do have a lot of calls.
Yes, sir. We will shift the schedule of the sanitation department on that week. They will not work on Wednesday. They will work on that Saturday. So we've already discussed. Marty's prepared for that, so.
And this has really been a good service over the years. We've kind of got mixed up on it a couple of times, but it's really a good service for our citizens. And I think the more or better they understand it, the better it even works for us. And I don't know how to do that other than ask the media to help us, or maybe our own website or whatever, but
We
think-
intend to send out information to the residents to make sure that they have how it's gonna change and how it'll affect them.
And are we saying that the reference to being in bags, was that for the regular pickup that goes in
Yes, sir.
in the,
In the
poly
polycart.
cart?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
To cut down on the amount of litter that we have.
yeah. Well, and that'll be a big help, at least from the citizens to the city on that part, okay. I don't have any other questions, thank you for.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions?
It's my understanding also that this has no impact on the extra haul that the citizens are allowed once a month with their water bill.
That's
Up
correct.
to,
You-
was it
You know,
1,000 or 1,500?
At the landfill.
Yes, at the landfill,
That is correct. Up to 1,500 pounds.
and it's in addition to.
Yes, sir.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion, we, approve ordinance 1896.
Second.
Section 1.
It's chapter 51, garbage.
We have a motion. Did we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second. Would the clerk please record the vote?
Councilmember Scherer,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomlinson, Councilmember Morris,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brittingham,
Aye.
Mayor Groby.
Aye. Motion passes. Number 5B, consideration of ordinance 1867A, amending Chapter 111 marijuana businesses of the Code of Ordinances. Mr. Hall.
Good afternoon. Danielle is at a training, so I'm gonna try to answer any question y'all may have. This amendment stems from a state statute change that happened last year and will bring our ordinance into better compliance with that statute. And the only change is the 1,000-foot buffer between a school and a dispensary. That's the only change. Right now, it pertains to all the marijuana businesses. The state statutes have changed, but our ordinances haven't. So we're trying to keep up with the state.
So you can grow, you can have a growing operation less than 1,000 feet from the
Yes,
school?
sir.
Now,
Yes, sir.
Less than 1,000, or it has to be 1,000?
Previously, all marijuana-related entities had to be 1,000 feet or more from a school, whether it was a grower, whether it was a processor, or whether it was a dispensary. Per the state statute now as amended, only the dispensaries have to be 1,000 or more feet from a school. The growers or the processors, there's not that limitation. And this statute amends our ordinance to reflect the state statute.
Is this all schools? Does it include private schools?
All schools.
All schools.
Tom, is a CBD seller considered a marijuana operation? Like a convenience store we have?
I mean, I'd have to look at the definition unless it's, I mean, I think the distinction there is the THC content, but, I don't know the answer.
Dispensaries, processors, and grows.
I don't think the CBD applies. I think
don't think so
because that could be sold in a convenience store or wherever. It's not, that doesn't fall under the marijuana statute. It's only the marijuana growers, processors, and dispensaries. And this just reflects the change to the state statute and disposes of the 1,000-foot requirement for growers and processors.
And that's probably gonna change again.
These are all gonna change every legislative session for the next few until they sort of line out and settle out on what the requirements are gonna be. So I would expect as the council that you're gonna see more of these type changes as the legislative session, progresses or after the legislative session ends in May.
Can it be retroactive? And if I decide to set up a growing operation 500 feet from the school, then next year they change it, can they?
Generally, as a general rule, if you have complied with the statutes and the ordinances at the time that you established your business, you will be allowed to continue that as a non-conforming use.
Grandfathered in,
That essentially, yes.
but if I sell it to somebody, then it probably reverts to.
Conceivably, yes. Or if you tear down your building and decide to do something else, you're no longer non-conforming. You just have to comply with what the ordinances say then.
Is there any more discussion? If not, do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion that we approve ordinance 1867A, amending chapter 111.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Would the clerk please record the vote?
Councilmember Scherer,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomlinson,
Aye.
Councilmember Morris,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brittingham.
Aye.
Mayor Groby.
Aye, motion carries. Item number 5.
Madam Mayor, there needs to be an additional motion for the emergency clause.
Okay. We have an emergency clause. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve section 2, declaration of emergency.
Do we have a,
Second.
we have a motion and second for the emergency clause? Would the clerk please record the vote?
Councilmember Scherer,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomlinson,
Aye.
Councilmember Morris,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brittingham, Mayor Groby.
Aye, motion carries. Number 5C, the 2020 Oklahoma Department of Emergency Management, OEM 9-1-1 Management Authority Grant Award, number F305202, in the amount of $156,346.40, with a total project cost of $195, $433 to implement an updated CAD, computer-aided dispatch system for the Durant Police Department Communication Center, C-2020-09. Chief Hauser.
Good afternoon. Thank you guys for hearing this. Becca is ill this evening, so she asked me to speak on this. I'd like to thank Becca and Lacey Dillingham, both. Lacey's our 911 coordinator. They worked tirelessly on this project since probably about October. Actually, it began before that, but if you'll remember, we come to you in about October for a November deadline to submit a grant to the 911 Management Authority, and they reviewed that grant, sent it back to tweak it here and there, take some things out, itemize some things, and it's been back and forth for several months now, and then finally got the approval of the award letter. This $195,433 is actually gonna cost the city their match of $39,086.60 if we was to accept that. The plan was to use the fire tax money that has accumulated for purposes such as this, and so we have that money set aside currently to fund the match. If you certainly have any questions about the 911 system, the CAD system, or, you know, exactly what this will be used for, Lacey would be happy to come up and explain that and why we need it as well.
What's the life of the software, and then how often do you expect to have to redo this?
I got you. The current one, the current software we have right now was implemented in 2007, I believe. Lacey, is that correct? The version? And you talk about the life of this program or the software. The CAD software that we implemented in 2007 probably should have been upgraded. What version are they on now? Five more versions since the one we have. So it's five versions old and not serviceable any longer. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion?
I make a motion, we accept the 2020 Oklahoma Department of Emergency Management, OEM 911 Management Authority Grant Award Number F305202, the amount of $156,346.40.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? Would the clerk please record the vote?
Councilmember Scherer,
Yes.
Councilmember Tomlinson,
Aye.
Councilmember Morris,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brittingham,
Aye.
Mayor Groby.
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Does this have an emergency clause, Tom? Okay. 5I, wait a minute, 5C1, consideration to accept the 2020 Oklahoma Department of Emergency Management, OEM 9-1-1 Management of Authority Grant Award Number 5305202 in the amount of $156,346.40 with a total project cost of $195 to implement an updated CAD computer-aided dispatch system for the police department.
It's my understanding that's the one that we just voted on, number 1, and number 2 would be the agreement, to sign the agreement.
Okay.
I was kind of wondering about that.
That's correct. C2 is the matter on the table at this time.
Okay, C2. Is there any questions for the chief, or do we have any questions for anybody? We're voting on C2, right? Okay, do we have a motion?
I make a motion, we approve item C2.
We have a motion, second?
Yeah, I'll second.
We have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? Would the clerk please record the vote?
Councilmember Scherer,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomlinson,
Aye.
Councilmember Morris,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brittingham,
Aye.
Mayor Groby.
Aye, motion carries. Next item, number D, consideration to approve the railroad pipeline crossing agreement C-2020-10 related to the Tubasek Durant Utility Infrastructure Improvements 17488 CDBG-ED 18 C-2019-32. Hello, Brandon, long time.
Hello, Mayor, how are you? Filling in for Becca. This is an agreement between the city and the UP Railroad for crossing of their their line with a water line in the CDBG project. We're boring their railroad. And there is a cost that should be included in the packet, but that's being covered in the grant. So we're working right now to get that cost included in the grant, because they provide a full-time inspector while we're doing the bore and require us to pay for that.
Any questions for Mr. Brandon? Or any-
Brandon,
What is the cost? I'm trying to find the cost, estimated cost.
It's, I believe the estimated cost of their inspection services, we pay them, I think it's $1,000 a day plus so much an hour, about 26,000 for their inspector to be out there. We're not even actually getting on their property, but we're boring from your property to your property, but they stay on their property and inspect the bore.
The projected cost is 21. The projected cost is 21,556.
Our CDBG grant funding is what we're asking for this cost to come out of, correct?
Yes, sir.
That's
So
correct.
this
Oh,
is,
Yeah, Department of Commerce has indicated that they would fund it if we get the paperwork to them. So that was as of today.
so are we moving forward with this? I mean, is work going on?
Yes, we are approaching the railroad. We've already awarded the construction contract. But we weren't aware of that there was gonna be a fee from the UP when we actually permitted the railroad bore.
So it's pretty important that we're successful in getting that money, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Any further discussion? Any more questions for Brandon? Are we ready to call for a motion?
Make a motion to approve the railroad pipeline crossing agreement C 2020-10 related to the Tubisex Durant utility infrastructure improvements. 17488 CDBG-ED 18 C 2019-32.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? If not, would the clerk please record the vote?
Councilmember Scherer,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomlinson,
Aye.
Councilmember Morris,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brittingham,
Aye.
Mayor Groby.
Aye, motion carries. Item number E, consider approval of ordinance 1898, amending Durant Code of Ordinance, section 32.125, regarding functions of the Airport Advisory Board. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, ma'am. This ordinance brings the duties of the advisory board in line with an advisory board. They had duties outlined in the code that gave them management authority, and that's not in line with advisory roles. So there was conflicting there. So this corrects that, and it also establishes attendance requirements to serve on, as a member of the advisory board. So you couldn't miss more than 2 consecutive meetings or 3 meetings in a 12-month period.
They meet quarterly, or they meet monthly?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah,
Every other
every
month?
other month,
Okay.
yeah.
Are there any questions, any discussion? If not, could we call for the vote? For a motion?
Make a motion to approve section 1 of ordinance 1898, amending Durant Code of Ordinances, section 32.125 regarding functions of the Airport Advisory Board.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, would the clerk please record the vote?
Councilmember Scherer,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomlinson,
Aye.
Councilmember Morris,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brittingham,
Aye.
Mayor Groby.
Aye, motion carries.
I make a motion to approve section 2 for the emergency clause for ordinance 1898.
We have a motion. Do we have a second to declare emergency clause?
Second.
Would the clerk please record the vote?
Councilmember Scherer,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomlinson,
Aye.
Councilmember
Aye.
Morris,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brittingham,
Aye.
Mayor Groby.
Aye, motion carries. F, consider approval of ordinance 1899, amending Durant Code of Ordinance, Section 32.047, regarding functions of the Cemetery Advisory Board.
This ordinance does the same thing for the cemetery board as the other one did for the advisory board, and it establishes the same attendance requirements.
I'd like to point out, does anyone have a copy of that or have it up on the screen? There was an error in the writing of that, and I don't have that. Tom, do you have that handy, that?
Where is it?
That was on the Cemetery Advisory Board. There was an error.
What was the error?
Right,
Did you say, what was it?
yes.
I don't remember. That's why I wanted to look. It was pretty easy to find. I was looking.
Two consecutive meetings or 3 meetings in a calendar year.
That's a
Scrivener's
Scrivener's
error.
error. It can be repaired.
Okay, no problem. All right, do we have or any more discussion, or are we ready to call for the motion?
Make a motion to approve ordinance 1899, amending the Durant Code of Ordinances, section 32.047, regarding functions of the Cemetery Advisory Board, section 1.
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Any further discussion? Would the clerk please record the vote?
Councilmember Scherer,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomlinson,
Aye.
Councilmember Morris,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brittingham,
Aye.
Mayor Groby.
Aye, motion carries. Do we have a motion for the emergency clause?
I'll make a motion to approve section 2, the emergency clause for ordinance 1899.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Would the clerk please record the vote?
Councilmember Scherer,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomlinson,
Aye.
Councilmember Morris,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brittingham,
Aye.
Mayor Groby.
Aye. Motion carries. Next item, item G, consider approval of recommendation from Durant Industrial Authority to expend funds in the amount of $15,700 from Economic Development Sales Tax to pay for Cardinal Drive widening project. Miss Lisa.
Hello. So that's, the name is actually Cardinal Way. It is a city-owned street. And the Oklahoma Department of Transportation, so this has been an ongoing deal for many years. I can find documentation back 10 years ago where they were having issues, people having traffic accidents due to trucks slowing down to turn in. They're on our city-owned street, Cardinal Way. So we've, our Durant Industrial Authority members yesterday voted to approve or suggest that the council expend funds from the quarter-cent sales tax to pay for the widening. The proposal is that the city would do the work and the funds will be used to purchase materials.
Are there any questions for Miss Lisa?
I guess the city manager and the street department are okay with the
Yes.
city doing this?
Yes, sir.
And not contracting it out?
Yes, sir. Everybody's been involved in the process.
Do we have to, I guess in the ODOT, are there some,
No, sir, because it's a
Restrictions,
city
eh?
street.
pardon me,
No, sir, because it's actually city street.
but we're out at the highway, right?
Yes, sir.
And we are discussing additional measures with the state, so.
Are there any further questions?
I move approval of the $15,700 from the Economic Development Sales Tax to pay for Cardinal Drive widening project.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? If not, would the clerk please record the vote?
Councilmember Scherer,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomlinson, Councilmember Morris,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brittingham,
Aye.
Mayor Groby.
Aye. Motion carries. Number H, consider approval of Resolution 2020-09 regarding indebtedness pledge to the capital improvement sales tax. Would you like to discuss that? Yeah, you go ahead.
Well, prior to the sales tax election in February, it was discussed that there was concerns that the council would borrow money against that tax longer than the term, like it had been done in the past. And so members of the public asked that the council say that they would not do that, and so that's what this resolution does. It says that the council will continue to pay down its indebtedness and not obligate funds from that sales tax beyond the term of that sales tax, which would be June 30th of 2041. So,
Is there any discussion? I might add that we would have not gotten some of the votes without that being promised resolution stating that. Any further discussion? I don't like the looks on your face.
I might suggest a clarification, and this may resolve the question, but on the number one of the resolution, it says the city of Durant will continue to reduce the current indebtedness pledged to the capital improvement sales tax. I think the capital improvement sales tax is actually pledged to the indebtedness, but current indebtedness would be any indebtedness that the city incurs. And so I think that may be a little bit vague in that under that first provision, the council may be expressing a desire not to incur any indebtedness, period, because any indebtedness is current indebtedness. And by that statement, you're saying it will continue to reduce current indebtedness. If you incur any additional debt, you're not reducing current indebtedness, but you're enlarging it. I think I know what the intent is there, and that is that the city of Durant will continue to retire existing debt, which you have an obligation to do anyway, but the city of Durant will continue to retire existing debt, and then any new debt won't extend beyond the 2041. But I think that statement there is a little bit vague in that it could be construed as the council making a statement, we won't incur debt against the sales tax, period. And I don't think that's the intent. But if it is, that's council's priority, but.
Doesn't it just simply mean that we promise not to have any debt incurred by that tax on the books at the time it sunsets 21 or 2 years from now?
I think so, and I think I think that's accomplished by number two. Number one, I mean, I think is not necessary in that the city doesn't even have the option to not reduce current indebtedness or not retire existing debt. But I think just reading number one could be construed as we will continue to reduce debt against the sales tax, but that's not really the case. You're going to actually increase debt against the sales tax, not extending beyond the term of the tax, but I would argue that number one may not even be necessary.
So if number one was stricken, the resolution could be approved with that amendment?
Sure.
And that would satisfy, what you're saying is it would satisfy the entire.
Yeah, I think it's just, I mean, the city has the obligation to retire the existing debt, whether that's in there or not. And I think that's what the intent of that number one is.
The way I've always understood it is, if the tax would not have got extended, when it sunset, we'd still have a big debt. We're trying to prevent that situation
Sure.
20 years from now.
Sure.
That's all it amounts to.
And this is just a resolution. I mean, you guys could do
Yeah.
something different next month. But this is just this is a statement of intent. And I think number two is clear that you don't intend to incur debt. The sales tax, which is pledged to retire, that debt would last beyond the 2041 sunset date. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if we just remove number one, we're cool to go, right?
That would be my suggestion.
Can we make the motion that we
I have
approve it with just,
I have another
and-
question, if I may.
yeah, I was just gonna say, can we approve it with just removing number one?
Sure.
Okay, go ahead. Councilman Tomlinson.
And Alan, I think I need your help on this. But even in recent months, and to be clear, I think the Utilities Authority is the only one, the city can't borrow money, quote, borrow money. It's through the Utilities Authority, is that correct?
As a general rule, that is correct.
And help me understand that in recent years and even in recent months, within the last year, particularly the $4 million I think we borrowed some few months ago for the water meter deal. The language of sales tax is still in that. Help me understand why Utilities Authority is borrowing with sales tax pledged as security or to pay the note?
We have multiple tranches of debt that are outstanding, and the vast majority of that debt is secured by a combined pledge or lien on your water, sewer, garbage, and 3 cents of sales tax. One of those 3 pennies being the capital improvement penny we're talking about here. That's what the collateral position is. In terms of where the dollars come from, where the payment is made from, is another question, okay? But as this exists right now, we have a collateral pledge that involves the utility revenues and those 3 pennies of sales tax. And I don't believe that any of that debt currently goes beyond the term of the tax. Is that correct, Chris? Currently, and there's a couple items that are coming up on the authority agenda that would involve a proposal to incur some additional debt. Those 2 obligations would also be within the term of the existing capital improvement sales tax extension.
Okay, so who's making the payments?
The payments are being made by the authority from, again, I can't tell you what actual dollars they're coming out of, but the pledge of collateral is utility revenues that are in the authority as well as sales tax dollars that have been appropriated over to the authority, but the actual payment comes from the authority.
So
Jerry,
help me
if I-
understand the future need, that we would follow the same process or protocol as previous loans, whereas sales tax is pledged, but we're 15 years down the road, or I won't be here, but 15, 18, 20 years down the road. Does this prohibit a future council from sales tax being part of that formula, that collateral formula?
If the debt extends beyond the termination date of the tax, is that your question?
Okay, but 2 pennies of that 3 cent is always gonna be there.
That is correct. That is correct. I mean, a couple of points. One, this resolution is at least expressing the intent of the current city council, that as was just noted by the city attorney, you could modify that resolution next month, 10 years from now, future council. I think you're expressing your intent, as I read it, that obligations that are secured by or potentially being paid out of that sales tax wouldn't extend beyond the termination date of the tax. That works right now, okay? If you get to the point in the future where you make a decision that, well, we also have utility revenues as well as 2 other pennies of sales tax as potential revenue sources, a future council or a future trustee might change their mind and extend beyond that tax and in fact not be using the capital improvement tax as the repayment source.
Isn't that an explanation of why, even though it's been phrased as the city incurred debt that went beyond the capital improvement tax sunset date, in reality, it wasn't just the capital improvement tax that was pledged to that debt. It was that was just part of the formula.
That is an accurate statement. But the other side of that same reality is if that tax, if that 1 cent dropped off, it makes things very difficult from a
Was that
cash
not
flow
considered,
standpoint.
was that not considered over the years, Alan?
I think it probably was. So again, without, knowing everybody's mindset during that process, but again, I understand, I think the intent of the resolution is to try to avoid, that situation if possible, and at least in terms of what's being viewed and proposed tonight, we would be consistent with that in the sense that the 2 debt obligations that are being considered are within the term of that tax. But I don't know if that's
Thank you.
helpful.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Are we ready to call for the motion on item number H?
I move, we approve resolution 2020-09 regarding indebtedness pledged to the capital improvement sales tax.
Last item 1.
Oh, yeah, that's item 1, I'm sorry.
Okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? We have a motion. We have a second.
I would ask the city attorney if he's comfortable with just that one amendment as far as the balance of it.
Oh, I think given that amendment, it clearly expresses the intent to not incur debt beyond the sunset date of the capital improvement tax.
Thank you. If there's no further discussion, would the clerk please record the vote?
Councilmember Scherer,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomlinson,
Aye.
Councilmember Morris,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brittingham,
Aye.
Mayor Groby.
Aye. Motion carries. Number I, consider approval to engage BOK Financial Services for financial advisory services provided to the City of Durant and its public trust. Chris?
Alan may be the one to talk, but this is going to be a moot point until we get to the authority and we talk about the 2 debts. I mean, the fees are contingent. It's only if we do the financing, so kind of feel like the cart's ahead of the horse here, but you can approve it, and if you don't approve the financings, we can tear it up and move on down the road.
I've got a question.
Yes, sir.
BOK, is that Bank of Oklahoma?
It is. We're the subsidiary that's not the bank. We're the broker dealer that's kind of monitored under FINRA and the SEC versus the Federal Reserve on the banking side. So if you have any questions, I mean, we've served you guys before as municipal advisors. So in our role, we have a fiduciary responsibility to you. We're advising you on what we believe is in the best interest of the city on how to borrow money at the best terms available. And then Alan, his contract's on the authority side, and he also looks out for your best interest, but is on the legal side drafting the documents.
Any other questions for Chris?
Move approval to engage BOK Financial Securities.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, would the clerk please record the vote?
Councilmember Scherer,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomlinson,
Aye.
Councilmember Morris,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brittingham,
Aye.
Mayor Groby.
Aye, motion carries. We are now entering the public hearing portion, number 6, under public hearings.
Do we need Becca here for this, or, I'm sorry,
A lot of this. Would we just move to no action? Pardon? Okay, since Ms. Becker is not here, there will be no action on number A. That would take us down to B. Yes, they're here. Under public hearing, under item B, consideration PC 2020-03, resolution number 2020-03, a conditional use permit for the placement of a mobile home to be located at 208 Southeast Fifth. Is there anyone to speak on this here tonight?
This item is required to go through the conditional use permit process because the request to place a mobile manufactured home on an existing lot located at 208 Southeast Fifth does not meet the current requirements for an R3 zoning. So it went before the planning commission and passed with a 3-2 vote to approve.
It's my understanding that this is going to be a temporary thing. Is
No, ma'am.
okay, it's a permanent thing.
Yes, ma'am.
Any questions for Mark or any discussion?
What happens, it's conditional use, what happens if the current owners sell?
It stays that use.
Now, my understanding is that the new person has to come in and reapply.
Conditional use permit's not transferable, you gotta reapply for a new permit
Okay.
with each new owner. Sorry, Mark, you
Stay up here. No, thank you.
There was one person that protested.
Yes, I had one protest letter.
Is there anyone here who wishes to speak on this?
I'd like to ask Mark a couple more questions. if
Okay,
you could, Mayor.
sure.
Or some clarification. I think in the planning and zoning meeting, it was brought up that there's already a manufactured home in that area. You probably weren't there. Okay. I went out there and looked at that general area, 78 East Main, railroad tracks, just where that section of housing is down in Mineral Bayou. There's about 35 houses in there. I believe, handful of brick ones, the rest of them are wood in that manufactured home, and one business. I pulled the county assessor's stuff on that. This ordinance was passed, I guess Jerry might even been here then, it was in '99. Quite a few ordinances were passed concerning manufactured homes within the city limits during that time. Were you here then, Marty?
No, I wasn't.
And this other manufactured home that's in that specific area was brought in 1987, which would have made it non-conforming whenever the new ordinance was passed in '99.
Right.
So there were no conforming manufactured homes in that little general area. I know on the other side of the railroad track there is, but in that specific area where this other homeowner's talking about, I believe it was also brought up there's multiple vacant lots in that area that could meet the same requirement with a conditional use permit. Is that correct?
I
mean,
don't
they-
know how many are actually vacant, but a lot of those are owned by the city, because they're actually were in
Okay.
a floodplain buyout.
In that general area right there, where the
If you look-
description I gave.
If you look a
right.
block to the north of that red square,
Right.
that, all those vacant lots are all city lots,
Right.
or a lot of them are.
I think that the discussion in the planning and zoning, just listening to the members talk, you know, that they were talking about the area in general, I guess, southeast side of town, not just specific
Sure.
like I was. And I believe one of their concerns was also that if you approve this conditional use permit, there's nothing to stop you from technically approving or denying the next one. And that I believe one of the issues was that it could possibly open the door to having a lot of manufactured mobile homes, modular, whatever you wanna call them, in that area. So,
Every customer has the right to ask you for that.
right,
And you set a precedence of manner, doesn't mean you can't.
right. It doesn't mean you have to follow it. I'm just
Yeah.
saying though, you do. And so that's, obviously every time you come in for a vote, you have the right to vote whatever way you want. And every circumstance is different that the person's bringing it to you with. So I just want a clarification on that and to point out that that one home was, manufactured home was already there prior to the ordinances that were passed governing this. Thank you.
Kind of address Vice Mayor's comments too. I was a freshman at that time, but there, believe it or not, still had gray hair, but, there were a lot of requests for mobile homes and, manufactured homes at that time, and some had already been approved, even, out on West Main. And community development, Marty, I don't think you were here then, but community development went to work on that and brought before councils their recommendations, and so that was going. It was pretty active at that time, and just to follow up too, not just that area, but the north side, the west side, the east side, the south side. Anybody could come and apply for a conditional use permit. And I'm glad we pointed it out, it is non-transferable. Doesn't mean it wouldn't be approved again, but
Exactly.
they'd have to go through the application process again.
I just want to make one clarification. The only city-owned lots in that area there were on the far east side there where the wooded area is, those are city-owned. And then the northeasternmost lot to the west of there's some houses there just to the west of the wooded area. That furthest north lot there that borders Main Street is city-owned. The rest of all those other lots are all privately owned. Yes.
Okay.
So those are,
I knew we had some lots there.
the city owns the lots there in the wooded area, kind of in that floodplain along the creek there, but there's only one lot there south of Main Street, and it's the northeasternmost lot there, north of those houses that the city owns. The rest of those are all privately owned lots. So I think that goes to the concern that if I understood the question right, the approval of a conditional use permit on this lot may put the council in a position to have to answer to all of those lots to the north if a similar application is made. Because there's only one city-owned lot there to the north.
Any further questions for Mr. Mark or Mr. Marty? Any further discussion? Are there any other people present who wish to speak? Come forward, please.
My name is Billy Putman. Excuse me, I can't hardly talk right now. I'm the owner of the lot. The reason I'm trying to put the double wide, the modular home there is because my house burnt down late 18, late November in the year of 18. So I've got it all torn down. One of the economic factor is what's driving me to put the modular home. I'm at retirement age. Excuse me. It would put me under undue pressure to have to build a house there. It would cost me twice as much. And I know the city has certain guidelines for me to go by to put it in there. And they would all be upheld, of course, due to the inspectors and all that. But if anything in that neighborhood, it would do as much to dress up that area as what's in there now. I've lived there for about 35 years. I own 3 of the lots on Southeast Field. And except for the old house that was my mother's house, that's probably the best looking one in the neighborhood. It's a very depressed area, and I would ask the council to please look at this with open eyes. And that's all I've got to say. Excuse me.
Were, Mr. Putman,
Yeah.
were you living in the house that burned
Yes, sir.
at this
Yes,
location?
it's been home for 38 years approximately.
You've been there
Yeah,
38 years?
yes, sir.
Mr. Putnam, I'm a little confused on this map. In the red triangle, is that a vacant lot now? Is that what burned?
The red spot there where the house was,
Yeah.
that's exactly where the house
So
was.
it's
yeah.
the old picture.
Any other questions for Mr. Putman?
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Any other questions? Anyone else wish to speak? If not, we're ready to, I guess, discuss this and vote. Do we have a motion?
I have a question. Marty, Mark. Either way, let's see, if it's denied, if indeed that were the vote or motion, does that end it, or could he apply again?
He could always apply again as many times as he would like. I wouldn't think he would go to the trouble and the money that it takes to apply if he's gonna get denied every time.
Thank
I have one other question for Mr. Putman. You planning on skirting the double wide and kind of making it look like it's a permanent? Yeah, okay.
Mr. Morris, inside our code, there are building requirements for a mobile home, and it includes things like skirting and foundation and
Yeah.
plumbing, and
Yeah,
all those things are included. He would be treated just like any other person at that point.
okay.
It's really just the notion of having a mobile home on this particular site.
What type of skirting?
There's some requirements in there, most of the ones that, are, I mean, I don't know what you're seeing nowadays, a lot of it's vinyl nowadays, but
Yeah, that stuff doesn't hold up very good.
some of that depends on, what brand he buys and how that comes to, so I couldn't speak to that at this moment, but,
Yeah, the weed eater tears up the vinyl
yeah.
skirting. I mean, so after a few years, it starts
Well,
looking bad.
And at that point, it's a code enforcement issue, and so he would be asked to repair and replace as needed to, if it's no longer meeting the direction of the code.
And one of the conditions is it's a Class A mobile home, which means it's brand new. It has to be a brand new.
Well, and even in order to insure it, they have to do the anchoring and
Sure.
foundation kind of stuff. This might be a question for Mr. Putman. How long do you plan to be there, Mr. Putman?
Probably till my last breath. Plan on retiring.
So if a conditional use permit is issued under these circumstances, I guess there are other circumstances, but what if that becomes either vacant or that original applicant no longer lives there?
And this might be a question for Tom, it becomes hard to police, to be honest. I mean, we're not gonna know when he no longer lives there unless it's discovered. But the CUP is in his name, and usually we see this with commercial. And when a business sells, it changes names, and that's a trigger for us to check. But with residential, it's really hard to say. We're not gonna go knock on the door and make sure he's still living there. That's just as a matter of fact.
Is this permit tied to the property description when, if someone decides to buy it?
Yeah, it'll be tied to the property and it'll be tied to the name, his name as well.
I mean, like the abstract.
I don't know if they record those on the abstract.
I don't know the answer to that. I would be surprised if it is.
Yeah.
It would just be a matter of, if it did change hands, like Marty said, it's tough to police. It's not transferable if there was ever a time that it was discovered that someone other than the applicant owned the property, then it would be up to the city to, take steps to remedy that situation, which would not be pleasant or easy, because somebody will have purchased a piece of property with, or otherwise acquired it, whether it's by, through a probate, that's an ownership change.
Mhm.
So even if the applicant passes away and it's inherited or otherwise obtained through a probate, it's still an applicant change, it's still an ownership change that would subject them to a new application for a CUP. But at that point, it becomes even more difficult to deny, probably because there's then an existing structure that may have been there for years.
Councilman Tomlinson, do you recall in 1999 what the intent was, or why this was pushed forward back then?
This very thinking of mobile home control's not the right word, but
There's only two places you can put a mobile home in our town. It's a R4, which is a mobile home park, or agricultural. They're not allowed except by CUP to be in any of the other residential districts. However, they are allowed to be with a CUP, even, you could put one in Remington Hills. R1, R2, R3, if you got permission of council. Now, we don't feel like that's gonna pass very often, but just the way the code's written currently. And we haven't had a lot of these come through in my tenure with the city at all. Usually they're for agricultural.
And no one has protested them or against them putting this
There
there.
is one letter that was written to the city that should be in your packet from
I didn't see it.
from somebody, I didn't, and excuse me, I don't have it back.
I don't either.
Just helping them, but
And what was their reason? Does anybody know?
I believe the third reason was the exact same one that we're talking
Oh.
about, that it would open the door to other people asking for continued use, conditional use permits for manufactured homes in that area,
potentially devalue their,
and potentially devaluing the property. Yes, sir.
I would think that mobile home would be the best looking piece of property on that street.
I'm very familiar with that area. And you'd have to go looking for his property. It's not like it's sticking out on Main Street or anything. He's hidden way back in the deep.
Mayor, I might note that the letter of objection was by the adjoining property owner.
I might also remind you, planning commission struggled and passed this with a 3-2 vote, so.
Is the adjoining property owner here today? I guess not. Do we have any further questions for anybody? For either Marty and Mark, or for the applicant? Does anyone else wish to speak? Anyone else? Anyone else wish to speak? We will now call for a motion.
I make a motion, we approve resolution number 2020-03, giving a conditional use permit for the placement of a mobile home to be located at 208 Southeast Fifth.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? I will second the motion. We have a motion, we have a second. Is there any other discussion? Would the clerk please record the vote?
Councilmember Scherer,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomlinson,
Mr. Putman, with all due respect, I have to vote no.
Councilmember Morris,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brittingham,
Nay.
Mayor Groby,
Aye. I'm trying to figure out how many vote. We had a 3-2. Motion carries. That, we will now close the public hearing section of the meeting.
One more.
Oh, we got another one? I'm getting ahead of 8 ball here. Okay, number C, consideration PC 2020-04, approval of ordinance 1895, rezoning from R1 to R3, and the approval of the preliminary plat for property located east of Kale Switch Road and south of Choctaw Road. Mr. Mark again.
This is a housing development. The request for rezoning is located on the eastern side of the development. It's zoned R1 and it's requested to be zoned R3.
Howard, you got the plat?
On the right map.
You got the plat? Actually looks like drawing. There you go.
Yes.
So the R1 is the largest residential lot size we have. R3 is a little bit smaller lot size available. It's Choctaw's property. Choctaw and are building it, they're owning it. I think this is part of their LEAP program where they're helping people get low interest or low payment housing until they can afford to finance it on their own. They're going to build more houses here for this program, all gonna be, normal brick, single-family homes. They're just gonna be on a little bit smaller lot than what we would normally see on R1, which is perfectly acceptable. All the street and everything's gonna meet the codes. Actually, the sewer is not ours, and I don't believe the water is either.
No.
They are rural water 2 or 5. And then the sewer is going, we're gonna get the sewer business, but we don't own the sewer infrastructure in the ground, because that entire section is going through their lift station, and then it comes to us later. So these properties are really, they're just asking for the rezoning, and the plating meets all the requirements as well, so.
I think you mentioned it, but in the event you didn't, these are single-family homes.
Yes, and people see R3 and they assume apartment, all that, but these are single-family homes. They're just on a little bit smaller, so in R3, you can build a single-family home on a 5,000 square foot lot, whereas in R1, you would have to have 7,500 square foot lot. And so it allows them to use their land a little better.
Any further questions for Marty or Mark? Is there anyone here to speak on the other side? Are there any other questions? Are there any other questions? Are there any other questions? Is there any further discussion? Or are we ready to make a motion?
Move approval of PC 2020-04.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Ordinance 1895, Section 1.
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second. Any further discussion? Would the clerk please record the vote?
Councilmember Scherer,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomlinson,
Aye.
Councilmember Morris,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brittingham,
Aye.
Mayor Groby.
Aye, motion carries. We are now, the public hearing session is now.
Move approval of section 2 of ordinance 1895.
Where's section 2? We have a motion for section 2. Do we have a?
Second.
We have a second. Would the clerk please record the vote?
Councilmember Scherer,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomlinson,
Aye.
Councilmember Morris,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brittingham,
Aye.
Mayor Groby.
Aye. The public session hearing, I think, is now closed. Number 7 on our agenda, citizen comments on non-agenda items. I have one name, Dan Craig. Okay, we'll move on, do it then. Okay, do we have any new business? Do we have a motion for adjournment?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Would the clerk please record the vote?
Councilmember Scherer,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomlinson,
Aye.
Councilmember Morris,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brittingham,
Aye.
Mayor Groby.
Aye. We are now adjourned out of the regular city council meeting. Let the record show it is 7:20, and we are now in the Durant City Utilities Authority. Call to order, the roll call. Would the clerk please record the vote, or call the roll?
Trustee Scherer,
Here.
Trustee Tomlinson,
Here.
Trustee Morris,
Here.
Vice Chairman Brittingham,
Here.
Chairman Groby.
Here, we have a quorum. Under number 1, order of business, consent items. Do we have a motion that we accept them, A and B as they are, or does someone want to wish to pull one of them out? If not, do we have a motion that we accept consent items?
Move to approve the consent items, A and D.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? If not, would the secretary please record the vote?
Trustee Scherer,
Aye.
Trustee Tomlinson,
Aye.
Trustee Morris,
Aye.
Vice Chairman Brittingham,
Aye.
Chairman Groby.
Aye, motion carries. Under number 3 is information items. If there are no questions on any information items, we'll move to number 4, administration. Number A, consider waiving competitive bidding and declaring sole source for the repair of a step screen at the Headworks facility in the amount of $29,585.89 to Huber Technology. Mr. Marty.
Well done. So, this feels really loud. I'm asking you to consider waiving the competitive bidding on this because it's a very specialized piece of equipment. For the warranties we need and the proprietary parts that we need to fix our step screen, we've got to use Huber Technologies. And it's an operational expense. It's in the budget already. It's just a matter of the fact that it came back kind of high is why we had to bring it to you in the first place. This is at our Headworks facility down at Public Works. It is a screen that blocks large objects from coming into our sewer system. It's one of 2 or 3 check systems that we use to keep debris out, and it's just old and it needs repair. So I would appreciate your permission to move forward with this.
Any questions for Mr. Marty?
Artie, what would a new one cost?
Did we? 100? We looked at it, but it was gonna be quite pricey. And to be honest, I mean, it's a big piece of metal contraption kinda, so there's no sense in not repairing it at this point.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Any further discussion?
Marty, I understand sole source and that. Are these the only people, though, that make this stuff? And
In this region, for this particular brand and style and kind, and it's really hard to find people that cross over to different functions. A lot of these companies, especially at the specialty equipment, the pumps and motors and those kinds of things too, they work a region, and so they've kind of got the ticket on that region for that brand, you know. To fly somebody in to work on it from out of region is gonna, again, almost double your cost. So that's why we have this ability in the purchasing program to allow you guys to grant us a sole source ability.
thank you.
Yep.
Are there any other questions? Are we ready for a motion? Or Mike, did you have a question? Are we ready for the motion?
I move we approve administration 4A, waiving competitive bidding and declaring sole source for the repair of a step screen in the amount of $29,585.89 to Huber Technology.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second. Any further discussion? If not, would the secretary please call the roll?
Trustee
I'll
Scherer,
record the vote, excuse me.
Aye.
Trustee Tomlinson,
Aye.
Trustee Morris,
Aye.
Vice Chairman Brittingham,
Aye.
Chairman Groby.
Aye. Motion carries. Number B, consider and take action with respect to Resolution 2020-07 of the Durant City Utilities Authority authorizing the execution of professional services agreement pertaining to the financing of certain capital improvements benefiting the city of Durant, Oklahoma, authorizing the authority's financial advisor to distribute information packages to prospective financial institutions in connection with the referenced financing and containing other provisions related thereto. Thank you.
John, do you want to talk about any of the projects, or do you want to just kind of hop into the financing? Or do you want me
Do
to?
it either way, Chris.
Okay.
So what we're looking at is potentially borrowing over $13 million, $11 million to fund street improvements and $2 million to fund water improvements. Those improvements are in concert with the Infrastructure and Streets Task Force recommendations. So,
Yes. So I think we'll talk about this item and the next item together and start with the big spreadsheet here. And so as John was talking about, the different projects come out of the report and recommendations from the Durant infrastructure priorities. So this is in kind of in spirit of what you guys talked about earlier, not extending past the sales tax extension. So if you look in this kind of this big bar going across the top here, we have the Durant City Utility Authority. It says utility plus 3-cent sales tax. And then down below there, you can see each of the different debt obligations the city has. So you have the 2003A CWSRF, and that's what's the Clean Water State Revolving Fund through the Oklahoma Water Resources Board, which is a subsidized rate from the 2004 on across. So, and then going down the left side is your fiscal year of when those debt service payments hit each year. So if you kind of get over here on the far part of that bar, it says aggregate debt service. So as it relates to this security structure and what's being paid and obligated under there, your aggregate debt service in fiscal year ending 2017 was $3.5 million. It's actually $3,512,202. So everybody follow me there. And then the following year, fiscal year ending 2018, $3,523,656. So what we're kind of doing here is saying, okay, that's kind of the high water mark. That's what you guys have paid. You've gotten used to budgeting. And so since you had this tax extended, trying to get the projects done as soon as you can, especially as low as rates are today, and get what the citizens want completed. So what we're doing is looking at financing, and the one we're talking about now, and then the next item is going to be the OWRB loan, is in that next bar item right here. So you can see the projected debt service on the Series 2020 note. That's what we're talking about, so it is the approximately 11 million for the streets, 2 million for the water improvement needs, and so you can see the debt service is approximately a 15-year financing. And so with that, our plan is to put bid packets together, send them out to all the banks, local banks, regional banks, national banks. We'll come back with those bids a month from now, and at that point, you decide whether you want to award them or not at that time. I mean, I always say that we don't want to send out bid packets and have bids, have these banks go through, they go through weeks of underwriting to get it approved. So we don't want to put it out there if you don't plan on doing this, but that would be where you would authorize actually issuing the debt. We're here tonight, we're just authoring us moving forward with the bid packets. So then you can see to the right of that, we've got this hypothetical OWRB, and it's $12,935,000. So that's the sewer improvements. And so you can add those together and you can see that aggregate debt service. That's aggregate with everything to the left, all your existing, and all those two new. So you can see let's just jump out a couple years, like to 2023, we basically go up to about $3 million. So our variance number there is what I said before. You've been paying about $3.5 million, and even with these two new financings, your debt service is going to be approximately $3 million. So that green is saying you're going to be paying less. That's it starts the first year. There's a little bit of, you're going to pay a little more, but after that you're $265,000 less. Then the following year $528,000, $519,000. So even with these projects, your aggregate debt service is going down, and we are kind of deferring some of the principal payments out a little bit, but that's just, emergencies come up. We're just trying to leave you capacity, or if you need to do something at some point in the next few years, you have that ability, and you're still not going to go above that high water mark of 3.5 million. The interest rates on there, the rates are crazy. I can say like the 10-year Treasury's never gone below 1%. Yesterday it hit 0.5%, but today it's back up at 0.7%. Obviously the coronavirus has a lot to do with that. But it's it is a good time to be borrowing all-time historic low rates. So I think with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have. I guess I'd add a little more because you did talk about it in the council meeting, but and I thought about getting up here then, but you can see the 7, the 9, the 9B, the 2010. The CIP tax, fell off right here, in 2021. So you had another 10 years worth of debt obligated to a tax that didn't go on. We had that 3 cent. Well, basically that would have fallen down to a 2 cent in the utility. We're here, even, this one's the 15-year, the OWRB loan is still 20 years. We're still paying all this off, dropping it by $500,000, getting these two financings, and we're still staying inside the 20-year extension of the sales tax. So we are in compliance with what you passed on the council side, and that was the intent. That's what John talked to us about and the goal of doing these projects. So.
And Chris, one thing that I like about this is the fact that it will not cost the citizens any extra money, and we will not be messing with their property taxes.
That is correct. So no property tax. This isn't taking, there's no user fees being increased right now in utility. All these are being done with just because you did extend that sales tax, so that we are able to wrap around some of these other debts you have falling off and kind of pick up as those fall off. And once again, kind of lower your debt service payment versus where it's been historically.
Yeah, and one of the things that the task force had recommended was like a $7 and some odd cent charge to the utility bill, and this would eliminate that necessity as well. So the way we're looking at financing these projects.
And I did talk a little, just because we handed out. This is kind of a generic, just 25. You aren't doing a bond issue. Neither one of these are officially like publicly traded bond issues. Private placement bank note. Some of the things about doing the private placement bank note is we don't have to hire an underwriter. We don't have to go through a rating process with a bond rating agency and pay that fee. So there's multiple fees that we save by doing the bank note versus a true bond offering. But what I have in front of you is just a historic kind of 25-year what they've sold for revenue bond issue. So up on the top, that goes back from 1982 to today, and you can see, you know, those rates were as high as 14% in '82, and you can go down to today, and we're at call it 2.81. So this part down on the bottom is basically this box. I mean, we're just zooming in on this little 1-year piece here, and you can see even in the last year, we've gone from 4.5% to 2.81, 2.77, somewhere in there. And so your financings are shorter than this. I mean, right now, the OWRB loan, I think you're safe to say, unless something drastic happens, it's gonna be under a 2% financing. And I think on the bank note, we're, you know, in that 2.5 range, and maybe better. I mean, we just never know. I mean, pretty volatile right now, but historic low rates. So happy to answer questions.
I have a quick one, Chris.
Yes, sir.
So the 20-year extension of the 1% is approximately 20 times 3.5, which is 60 or 70 million. How does that compare to, we're asking for basically 213s for the streets and the hypothetical sewage problems and the 10 or 12 left over. So am I correct in thinking we've only obligated less than half of what we expect to receive just from the tax?
Right, it brings in about, is it 1 penny brings in about a 4 million, is that?
A little less, around there.
Round, yeah, kind of rounded, especially if you're looking over 20 years, you gotta assume there'll be some step up, so, yeah, I'd say that's accurate.
So we're not recklessly spending at this point.
Correct, I mean, I think that's why we show this
Yeah.
green here. I mean, I think one way you could look at it here and is, you know, if you laid another hypothetical, if you just took another one of those, the 12,935,000, and laid it right next to what's there, you can see you'd still be in the green. I mean, you could still borrow another, and you'd still, and you have even more capacity out on the long end. But even in the short end, which I would kind of say is the choke point, so to speak, as it relates to cash flow, because I mean, you just have a lot, all those other debts haven't fallen off yet. You'd still have capacity to borrow in excess of that number again, and still not cross that high water mark. And I think one thing also is, I mean, on these projects, especially with these rates being at the rates they are now, I mean, I don't know what you ask Brandon, but I mean, what is construction inflation? And so if construction inflation is 3% or even 2.5%, and you're borrowing money at sub 2%, you're actually net, you're going in the hole. I mean, you're gonna get less for your money tomorrow than you are today. I mean, now if you were borrowing at 5 and inflation was at 2, right, it makes sense to delay things. But when you're in an environment where you can borrow at a rate that's below what your inflation rate's been, it really doesn't make much sense to postpone them projects. Unless you can't afford them, I mean, then obviously.
Any other questions for Chris?
Chris, I've got one.
Sure.
Series 19, the OWRB, I'm on the right one. That shows the full, in this figure, that is showing the full $4 million that we approved last year for the AMR meters, which that was more than what was expected, I think at 3.1 and 3.2 million. And then we got the grant for 1.5. So this number already is lower than what you're projecting.
I adjusted that.
Oh, you did?
I did. So there is a footnote on there. So down below, I do have the 4 million listed just because it is. You're right. You authorized 4 million, but I put a little footnote down on the bottom in fine print. I don't know why our print's so small, but amortization based on anticipated 2 million drawdown. And so, and that's actually, even to your point, to some degree, John even says that's probably a little higher based on the grant money you received.
Right.
So you're right, that was higher, and we adjusted it down.
Any other questions? Are we ready to call for the motion?
I make a motion, we approve resolution 2020-07. Is that what we're trying to do here, right? Let me read some more, or is that enough?
That's enough. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion. We have a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, would the secretary please record the vote?
Trustee Scherer,
Aye.
Trustee Tomlinson,
Aye.
Trustee Morris,
Aye.
Vice Chairman Brittingham,
Aye.
Chairman Groby.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Chris. You still going to be up here another minute?
Yeah, I'll stay until.
All right,
until-
number C here. Consider and take action with respect to Resolution 2020-08, agreeing to file application with the Oklahoma Water Resources Board, the OWRB, for financial assistance through the Clean Water State Revolving Fund Loan Program, with the loan proceeds being for wastewater system improvements, approving professional services agreement, and containing other provisions related thereto.
So we talked about, you saw it on the spreadsheet. I mean, I think the only thing to kind of talk about, and you've done water board loans before, but I mean, this is a subsidized rate, the SRF programs are. You know, the streets don't qualify for it. So if we had that ability to go take the streets through there, we would, because it's gonna be a lower interest rate than the other. I mean, they're both low, but I mean, this is even more, there's a few extra hoops that you know, Brandon has to jump through, but it's worth it based on the lower interest rate you can get. So we're recommending you finance that through the SRF program. $70 ballpark, 170 today. I mean, if we could lock it in today, and you know, I mean, like I said, you saw that I have 2.25% in my numbers, but if we could lock it in today, it'd be about 1.7%. It's also a drawdown loan, so you don't have to, you don't have to put money in investment and earn less than so you only use the money as you need it. If you don't use it all, you can de-obligate it or get authorization to use it for some other like project through the water board. So.
And this number was based on Brandon's estimate of needs at the sewer plant, so.
Talk about the schedule on this one. I mean, on the bank financing, guy you tall, on the bank financing, pretty quick turnaround, okay? In other words, we'll go out and get financing bids, be back here in 30 days or so and approve that transaction. Money will be in the bank, and your engineering will kind of follow that. The water board transaction is going to be a little bit longer time frame in the sense that we have action night to kind of authorize the financing application. We sat down with Brandon, Chris, John, kind of worked through a time schedule. Brandon's going to try to get the engineering report delivered to DEQ about April 17th. It's kind of the time frame we're looking at, hoping that they'll get it approved in 30 days or so. But we've given them more time than that to get it approved. Chris is going to have a loan application into the water board by around May 1. And the thought is that we would go to the Oklahoma Water Resources Board for approval at their June 16th meeting, and would close the transaction sometime shortly after June 16th. It's at the date that we can close the loan, or about 10 days in advance of that date, that we can actually set the interest rate. So with rates as attractive as they are, the goal is going to be to get to that point as quickly as we can. But we think that's a realistic schedule in light of what needs to happen between now and the time the water board will allow the transaction to be approved and let us close. We would close the financing, again, based upon the engineer's estimate of the costs. If the project costs end up coming in less than the estimate, we only draw down those funds that we need. We only repay those funds that we need. If by chance the estimate is low, the bids actually come in higher, then we'd have the opportunity to either value engineer the project back, potentially put cash in a project, or in a third alternative, we could always borrow a little more money. But the point would be, at the date we approve and close the loan, we'd have that interest rate on that line of credit locked down. And hopefully, we're somewhere in the range of interest rates we're seeing today. So, again, it's truly a historic period in terms of interest rates, all-time US lows. So, that's all I have. If you have any questions?
Could Brandon get up here and tell us what $13 million buys?
So as we talked about inside the infrastructure committee meetings, your wastewater plant right now is rated for 3.55 million gallons per day, and you're currently treating over 3 million gallons per day. So you're operating close to 90% capacity, 80 some odd percent capacity of your wastewater plant. So the primary objective of this particular loan is to increase your capacity. And that'll increase actually up to over 5 MGD. We're not rating it that high, and there's some reasons for that to do with environmental and discharge permitting. We're not actually rating it that high, but your plant will be able to produce 5.33 million gallons per day will be the final number that your plant will be able to produce. So beyond the capacity increases, we're fixing things that have kind of always been an issue. You've needed a post-equalization basin that your wastewater plant dumps into before it goes to the creek since it was built. It probably should have been put in when it was built, but it's created a lot of problems over the years. We're adding an additional basin there, and most of the other stuff is just maintenance of your existing items, the things that you have out there that we're just maintaining. If you remember, there was a two-part in the Streets and Infrastructure Committee meetings. There was a two-part. First phase to take you up, increase your capacity, fix the issues we have at the plant. And then there was the second phase 2 to actually convert the process and kind of a future looking, but that was 10 or 15 years down the road. So there will be a second project, but that 10, 15 years down the road, probably as we get toward the end of this financing.
So I guess a follow-up question is, with the sludge press, once it's brought online, and what we're gonna do, I mean, of course, we don't know what the future holds with population, but this should more than push us to 15 years?
20 years on at least on your capacity. 'Cause your 20-year capacity is about 4.3, 4.4, somewhere right in there, and we're taking it up to 5.3, so we're building an extra 25% into the plant. And the reason we're doing that we're not taking it up to the exact number, is you have square reactors, and you have 4 of them, and to get to your 20-year capacity, we need about 1.1 of those reactors. We have to build an entire 6th reactor. So we have additional capacity that it's capable of treating. We're just not rating it at that high because it causes us some issues on the permitting side and also on the financing side if we go over a certain amount increase in one shot. So we're kind of rating it down, but yeah, that's probably 30 to 40 years of capacity. Now, I think somewhere about 15 years from now, you'll probably have to do another project to kind of fix some of the equipment that's probably going to be at the end of its service life.
Brandon and John, what we're considering too on the streets project, along with the engineering and everything that goes on with that, are we gonna be able to reduce the stormwater issue some, which will maybe even enhance
Well, definitely when you
the
get rid of,
capacity, or the 20 years even a little further, if indeed we can
You know,
get some of that?
going back to the previous item, as a part of the West Main Street improvements, there is a substantial amount of money and effort and a hydraulic study being done to reduce the stormwater on Main Street, which is a big inflow and infiltration problem. So when we get rid of that stormwater, yes, it is gonna help at the plant. Water coming into the plant from stormwater entering manholes, for sure. And beyond the capacity and the post-equalization basin, one of the things that we're doing that's really outdated at the plant is your existing ultraviolet disinfection system. We're totally redoing your disinfection. And other than that, most of the money is being spent on electronics. I mean, all your computers, SCADA, all your electrical equipment out there is 20 years old. So it's going to be totally redone. And that's kind of the weak link right now in terms of your process is disinfection, your actual capacity, and your electrical. So we're kind of going to fix the big ticket items. There are some additional things that would be nice. A second primary clarifier would be nice. A second filter would be nice, but aren't necessary to increase your capacity and aren't absolutely essential to the plant's operation. So we're not doing those right now because we kind of felt like that, you know, that maybe they'll be critical as we get on up toward that 5 MGD mark, but not right now. So we're kind of doing the things that'll take you forward 20 to 30 years. You know, another thing to add too is your biggest cost at the wastewater plant is power. And we're putting in two units. We're putting in turbo blowers and an extremely efficient UV system that's going to probably save you $50,000 to $100,000 a month in electrical cost.
How
So
much?
50 to $100,000 a month in electrical cost.
Wow.
What are we paying now? Electrical cost.
50 to 100 more than that.
That's, utilities is by far the biggest part of their operational budget. Water and wastewater both, actually. What wastewater's worse, but just the cost of power of those pumps and all that stuff.
I would guess you're paying $150,000 a month in electrical or more. We're gonna decrease your power by about 60 to 70% by putting in the turbo blowers.
And a lot of that's just new technology.
It is.
Kind of like getting a new air conditioner and a refrigerator with a higher efficiency rating.
Yeah,
Kinda
better ice
exchange.
maker.
Are there any other questions for Brandon? If not, thank you, Brandon.
Thank you.
Is there any further questions or discussions the council would like to ask? If not, are we ready for a motion?
I make a motion on item 4C, we approve resolution 2020-08.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, would the secretary please record the vote?
Trustee Scherer,
Aye.
Trustee Tomlinson,
Aye.
Trustee Morris,
Aye.
Vice Chairman Brittingham,
Aye.
Chairman Groby.
Aye. Motion carries. Do we have next thing is adjournment. Do we have a motion for adjournment?
I'd like to just make a comment, if I could, if I may. Thank all those on item B and C for your time and effort. I don't know that we've done it publicly, but I want to thank the citizens for renewing that 1 cent sales tax. They didn't have to. And the other thing is, and I apologize if this is out of order, but I say it with respect, but this council or previous councils have, provide the opportunity for the citizens to decide whether they want to extend or renew or even add a new sales tax of any type, including the property tax. Citizens have the opportunity to do that. Council doesn't do that. Council provides the opportunity. And I just want to be clear on that citizens always have the vote to either accept or approve or to not those funding mechanisms that allow a school district, a city, or any other dependent entity that depends on the public to move forward. So again, I'm thankful thankful that the citizens stepped up and renewed that, and new opportunities coming down the road may mean that the citizens consider something else. Thank you. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Well, he's,
And I want to say one thing. I looked at my notes after Councilman Scher's question. That's $186,000 a year is what they projected.
wow.
Saving.
Savings?
No,
Yeah,
that's
so
not
it wasn't per month, that was per year. When Chris said that per month would pay the debt service, I thought, well, that's not correct, it's per year.
That's still more than, that's good, still good.
Yeah, it's
Can
still
we
a
hold
lot,
him
it's still a
to
lot
that,
of money,
Tom?
but it's,
That'll help pay the debt.
Can we hold him to that?
is that'd be your engineering credit?
Thank you. Do we have a motion for adjournment? Pardon?
I believe Jerry has made the motion to
Oh,
adjourn.
did you make the
Why
motion?
don't I have a motion to adjourn on the floor?
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Would the secretary please record the vote?
Trustee Scherer,
Aye.
Trustee Tomlinson,
Aye.
Trustee Morris,
Aye.
Vice Chairman Brittingham,
Aye.
Chairman Groby.
Aye, we are now adjourned. We will now re-enter. We'll call to order the, let me see, it is 12 minutes till 8, and we'll call to order the Durant Airport Authority. Would the secretary please record the vote?
Trustee Scherer,
Here.
Trustee Tomlinson,
Here.
Trustee Morris,
Here.
Vice Chairman Brittingham,
Here.
Chairman Groby.
Here, we're all here still. Under consent items, number 1A, that's the only thing we have, so under consent, do we have a motion that we approve consent item?
Motion to approve the consent items.
We have a motion, do we have a second? This is approving the regular meeting minutes of February the 11th.
Wait on a second.
We need a second.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Would the secretary please record the vote?
Trustee Scherer,
Aye.
Trustee Tomlinson,
Aye.
Trustee Morris,
Aye.
Vice Chairman Brittingham,
Aye.
Chairman Groby.
Aye. Consent item approved. Information items, the only thing is the airport manager monthly report. Does anyone have any questions for the airport manager?
Katie, I promise you, we're not picking on you. But I have a couple of questions.
I expected as much tonight.
Well, one, in regards still to the avgas.
Yes, sir.
And I don't know how much longer we're gonna be out of pocket there, but are there any interim kind of things we can do to provide that fuel?
So if I could give a little bit of a narrative here, if that's appropriate, council members. 2 months ago, I was, that is loud. 2 months ago, I had started on the route to look at leasing a truck or even purchasing a truck and doing a truck-to-truck load. At that time, I went through 5 different regional companies that are the intermediate person to the big name brands who sell us fuel, and all different brands, and they all 5 said no. So I had reported that to my superiors and said, they won't do it. Our current fuel provider won't do it. Companies that work for Phillips 66, AvFuel, I mean, we're not talking about small time brands, but I guess their suggestion was to us that due to the risk and the safety hazards and the mitigation with this type of fuel, they wouldn't do it. This week, we had an advisory board meeting, or this past week, and a council member did find, an advisory board member did find one representative from a company, and I did contact them, and they are willing to do this. And I have gotten the costs on again, 2 months, I spent a couple of weeks trying to track it down, and I couldn't, and they did find this other company, and they are willing to do that, and I can share that information with
I have a question, Katie.
you. Yes.
I don't understand why it's taking so long. Is our tank leaking, or is it defective, or full of stuff, or what?
It's full of stuff, and it is defective, and the fuel is contaminated.
So why don't we try to buy a new tank? Is that not in the cards, or
We are. That was the process.
was the truck?
I
gonna
have,
do it?
so I've given, if you will, the city leadership 2 different avenues. The first, which we can go with the engineering firm and have a new tank built to specifications. This is the normal thing that most airports do. This is the general thing that happens. However, I did a lot of time through a lot of pain. I found a tank that has been pre-done and was done for an airport, private airport, and the people who originally bought it backed out. And everything that I can tell from an engineering, I don't have an engineer's degree, but everything that I can tell, that tank is perfectly suitable for us to purchase. And I have let city management know what the costs of both directions are, and I think they're evaluating that.
And we're going above ground, I guess, or as I recall. Yeah. Well, it sounds like
So in the
maybe a
meantime, I
solution is
think,
on the way.
yes, there's the potential that we could have a tank much sooner than building one and engineering specs. And that was my hope and my, what I was shooting for. We will have to get with the OCC, which is the Oklahoma Corporation Commission. They have to permit every tank in the state, and they have pretty strict regulations. And if we can get them and our current engineers who don't do tanks, but because this is a special situation where I'm providing them the specs and I just need them to review it, I think we can go forward with purchasing the tank that might already be there.
How are our owners getting fuel at this point if we can't use our tank?
Neighboring airports. And these are for the small aircraft only. Jet A is in service.
And Katie, I take it this is not something that just happened overnight. One day you go to work and the tank's all messed up.
My professional opinion is that it was not, the AST standards and the EPA standards put out a lot of requirements for us to, if we sell fuel, we have to check our own fuel. And we really weren't doing that to the standard that should have been done.
But that's gonna change in the future, right?
It's already changed. That does not happen anymore. So, good news is our jet fuel is very good.
I just got a real quick question for you. So you're talking about this possible tank that was designed for someone else that we may be able to purchase, or the truck. What's the time frame on both of them? Do you have any idea? I guess my
Yes.
question is
Yeah,
it something that we need to do the truck to serve customers now, or?
I think that is the concern of the advisory board, is how long it will take us to purchase that tank. If we cut them a check for $162,000, they can get it here in a week or two. But I also, the city, I mean, obviously, I'm
When my
saying
son
that
was
in
4
jest.
years old, he was gonna buy his mom and dad a boat and a car, and I asked him how he's gonna pay for it. He said, "Simple, Dad, just write a check."
I say that in jest, Councilman.
If it were that simple.
I know it's not, I realize that. But potentially, if we buy a tank that is already pre-manufactured, I would like to, again, check with the OCC, even if that means going up to their office and potentially even getting council involved if we need to, make sure we got something in writing. Hey, if we purchase this tank, bring it down. And then the city street department has already committed to helping us build a concrete pad in the similar area that the dispenser previous was already there. and then we just need an electrical contractor for the wiring. So it's only 3 steps, but they're big steps and a large pocket of money there.
Any other questions for Ms. Katie?
Thank you so much for that. I do have.
Sure.
We continue, I guess, to have issues with that gate.
Yeah.
And help me out, 'cause who comes in and out of that gate?
We do have airport rules that were established, and forgive me, I don't know what the date is. I have the document, but you know, and some of that included security provisions. Really, only people who are approved by airport authority and the managers that you hire should be coming in and out that gate, as well as tenants. Now, tenants can have passengers, they can have guests, but in reviewing a lot of these documents that haven't been touched in very long, I would like to amend them at some point when I get some extra time and say that, you know, it's standard security policies at every airport, even if you're not a large airport, to say if you have a guest, they need to be within your span of control. Right now, we have people coming and dropping off vehicles. We have unknown people coming in and out of that gate. We have people roaming around the airport that you know, unfortunately is a security concern for us. But I try to do my best.
With it, okay. So how does one make it work? How does someone get through the gate?
So, the gate was broken by vandalism in October, early of October. We had it repaired about 6 weeks ago. And the gate actually functions, the operator and the power mechanism to the gate. However, it won't stay on because there's a continuous power problem with the call box that is attached to the gate. And I think it's a matter of some bad wiring when we moved the fences around and expanded that area. And it just, we fix one thing and the other part breaks, so. And that happened recently, so. Again, I did get that back gate fixed. The operator isn't working. The gate will turn on, I can turn it on, but then the call box function, and then people will hit it again because they get mad. They can't get it to work.
Well, I appreciate all your efforts and the improvements and your persistence in working on things that have been neglected, and you're doing it, in my opinion.
We'll get that gate fixed one way or another. If I have to tear it down myself.
Talk to Marty and the city manager. Well,
Yeah.
If there are no more questions for Ms. Katie, thank you so much, Katie.
Sure.
Is there any further discussion? Are we ready to call for the motion? I guess we don't have to call for it, we just got. Okay, next on our agenda, citizens' comments on non-agenda items. And we have one person signed up, Dan Craig. Dr. Craig, you want to come forward? How are you, Dr. Craig?
I am fine. I just wanted to, at our advisory board meeting, we discussed the fuel situation, lack of able to sell 100 low lead under new business. We could not pass any resolution, anything, but almost everybody there was under the unanimous decision we need to try to get it as soon as we can, and I'm simply appearing tonight just to, I think it's already evident that the city council's aware of it and that we would appreciate any expediency in the matter. One thing that was just mentioned, previously selling 100 low lead, I don't believe that we ever sold 100 low lead that was not up to specs. the filters, the system has a safeguard of filters. And it's my understanding that those filters, if water gets in them or contaminants, they stop up and you can't pump fuel. And so if they get stopped up, fuel shuts off, you have to replace the filters. And now I may be wrong, but as far as I know, that never happened. So we never sold unsafe 100 low lead. I just want to make that clear that the city had never had a problem in that. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Craig. Is there any new business? If not, do we have a motion for adjournment? Maybe y'all want to stay here a little longer.
Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Have a motion, a second. Would the secretary please record the vote?
Trustee Scherer.
Aye.
Trustee Tomlinson.
Aye.
Trustee Morris.
Aye.
Vice Chairman Brittingham.
Aye.
Chairman Groby.
Aye. We are now adjourned.